Primobolan is one of the most talked about add-ons for guys that are on TRT. People claim that it lets you run higher testosterone, improves your physique dramatically, sharpens libido and erections, and has almost no side effects. But what's actually happening here, and is it as ideal and safe as people think to add on to TRT? All right, in this video, I'm going to break down how Primobolan affects estrogen, so you're going to want to stick around for that. Especially why it allows guys to run more testosterone, to dose their TRT higher. How specifically it drives anabolism and what it does to your physique. And of course, the caveats, the risks, especially regarding lipids and its cardiovascular impact. All right, so let's break right into estrogen control. The number one reason that men use Primobolan on top of just a regular TRT protocol is estrogen control. Now look, Primobolan cannot aromatize into estradiol, and it exerts anti-estrogen effects. So number one, no aromatization. Primobolan is a DHT-derived compound. DHT-derived compounds like Primobolan, like Masteron, like Proviron cannot aromatize or undergo aromatization into estradiol. Number two, and this is a mechanism that not a lot of people often think about, is androgen receptor competition. Primobolan binds very strongly to androgen receptors, which shifts the signaling toward androgen dominance. It reduces the binding of your actual testosterone, which reduces aromatization. So you get a less relative estrogenic effect at the tissue level where it matters. Primobolan converts to an intermediary compound, which actually competes for the aromatase enzyme and reduces estradiol. So while it is not as powerful as Aromatize, Aromatase, letrozole, any other aromatase inhibitor, it does behave like an aromatase inhibitor, albeit to a lesser extent. So it will block estrogen, and it will actually reduce estrogen on your blood. So here's where this makes sense and really helps people on TRT. It allows them to run higher levels of the primary aromatizable androgen, testosterone. So if you were running 150 milligrams of cypionate per week and you didn't have Primobolan in the picture, but then you added 100 milligrams of Primobolan in the picture, you reduced your estradiol by 25 points. Well, you can now run 175, 200, even 250 milligrams a week of testosterone. So then you get the anabolism from the extra testosterone, but then you get added dual anabolism by using Primobolan. So summing up the first part of this video, you could actually reduce estrogen, take yourself from 55, 65 to 30, which is usually the sex-specific zone for both libido and erections, fix your TRT protocol regarding sexual function, and add more testosterone and more anabolism. Let's talk about the anabolism part. In the bodybuilding community, Primobolan is actually considered an anabolic and, in some people's opinions, a mild anabolic. But this is very misleading, because it actually creates very high quality tissue gains. So the mechanisms for this, of course, androgen receptor binding and activation, which is going to increase protein synthesis and enhance nitrogen retention. It lowers the estrogenic noise from your protocol, which is going to make you look leaner. So you got less water retention and more contractile tissue versus fluid. Primo has a profound anti-catabolic effect, which means in and of itself, aside from its anabolic effect, it is reducing muscle breakdown. So with Primo, it's like you end up not just gaining size, but you get dense, lean, functional muscle. The sculpting effects of Primobolan is where it really stands out. So you have no water retention from it, so no estrogen conversion, and therefore lower extracellular fluid. That, combined with increased androgenicity at the tissue level, creates that hard, tight look. Androgens, we know, can increase fat mobilization, so it is entirely possible that in addition to those mechanisms, Primobolan is exerting some sort of mild lipolytic effect. Look, if you need to dial in permanently on TRT, get Mastering Libido and Erections on TRT, the Sexual Function Playbook, which covers every ester with strategic protocols to show you how to dial in libido, erections, sensation, and climax on every ester of testosterone. It is down in the description of this video. It's an instant download, and it can be yours instantly. If you're frustrated with TRT and need to dial in specifically libido and erections, energy and anabolism, and fix sexual dysfunction, hire me. I am a coach that has been working for 7 years to fix complex sexual dysfunction on TRT, and you can book me in under a minute at livecortex.com or down in the description of this video. Using testosterone cream is the most advanced thing you can do on TRT, and I created a video course showing you specifically how to dial in libido and erections on test cream, and you can get that also down in the description of this video. Lastly, if you need to dial in on Cypionate, yeah, it's hard, but I've built a video course on that. The only instructional video course that shows you how to dial in test Cypionate for sexual function, also down in the description. Generally, I've seen people dial in on TRT when they otherwise were having estrogen problems, couldn't quite dial in. They would have to go to these lower doses of the long esters, like 110 to 120 milligrams, and the anabolism was sort of subpar. It's not that they could actually build some significant physique with those lower doses of testosterone, but they had to be down there in order to control estradiol. They go up to 150 milligrams, 170 milligrams a week of testosterone, and they lose erectile quality, libido, sensation, and climax. So they go down to 115, 120. They have all those things back. The sexual function is intact, but the anabolism is lacking. Adding Primobolan at your right dose and at your right frequency, which is going to be different between men, fixes the estrogen problem, allows you to dose more tests, gives you more anabolism, and dials you in on TRT. Now, I want to make one note. This is something that I've learned in coaching over the years, that the commonly suggested dose or ratio of Primobolan, i.e. the 1-1 ratio, so if you have 200 milligrams of test, you dose 200 milligrams of Primobolan, usually does not work out for people and tends to end up being better for bodybuilders who aren't really focused on sexual function while they're running cycles. Remember, Primobolan acts like a mild AI, but a little bit stronger than a mild AI. So for people that are sensitive to that, when you drop or block the aromatase action, especially in the brain, you're going to get reduced libido, potentially even reduced erectile quality. So you have to be careful with the 1-1 ratio. If you're dosing 200 milligrams of test, instead of 200 milligrams of Primobolan, you're better off starting with 75 to 100 milligrams of Primobolan a week. Usually you're getting Primobolan enanthate, so I would be dosing that twice a week. Call it 100 total. You dose 50 on a Monday and then 50 on a Thursday. Some people are going to be exceptionally sensitive to the estrogen reduction element of Primobolan and are going to have to microdose it at somewhere around 10 milligrams a day. I know that that sounds cumbersome and a little bit ridiculous, but there are men that are that sensitive to things that block estrogen. Even though estrogen is already high and needs to be lowered, they need to microdose Primobolan. All right, so let's talk about the side effects and the risk profile. People often commonly describe Primobolan as an add-on to TRT as being side effectless, meaning you don't really notice any side effects except for you're stronger and look better. In the end, it being side effectless is not true, but it does have a low side effect profile relative to other compounds. All right, so the major risks, the big ones are, the biggest one really is lipids. Look, DHT-derived compounds, including Primobolan, reduce HDL and they increase LDL. They modify hepatic lipase activity. And the result of that is a worse or a skewed cholesterol profile, right? You got super high LDL or raised LDL, then your HDL goes down 10 to 15 points. So yes, there are things you can do to try to mitigate that. I think my number one strategy to try to keep lipids in check is, number one, do cardio. And number two, take tocotrienols. Tocotrienols act like statins in their mechanism without the side effects. Let's talk about hair loss. Look, DHT-derived androgenic compounds can absolutely reduce subcutaneous water in your scalp, which is going to reduce the health of hair follicles. That is, in fact, as far as the literature tells us, the primary mechanism by which DHT causes hair loss. It's basically making your hair follicles less healthy. Now, compared to Proviron, Primobolan is more hair friendly, I would say, but it is not completely hair safe. So you're going to have to do the risk-benefit ratio when running Primobolan, monitoring your hair thinning, your scalp, if you've got open spots, if it just feels a lot less dense, and then making a decision on whether or not you want to continue using Primobolan. Most people, they use it for 3-4 months. They get some good gains that are keepable. They cycle off of it. They cycle back down to a lower dose of TRT to control estrogen. And then they repeat the cycle again after, of course, lipids are in check 4 or 5 months later. That's one way to do it. A big question that people often ask is, can you indefinitely run Primobolan on TRT? And the answer to that question is, well, sure, you can indefinitely do it, assuming that you're controlling and monitoring your lipids and assuming the detrimental hair loss effect is not a game breaker for you. If it gives you more anabolism, allows you to take more testosterone, controls your estradiol, and your blood markers look healthy, I really see no problem with consistently dosing Primobolan in a measured way over time. So in the end, if used correctly, and this is really the point that I want to make on this video and is the point that I'm making on most of the videos on this channel, you've got to use compounds for what they do extremely surgically. You've got to dial them into your physiology. That is our jobs. If you can do that correctly with Primobolan, it allows you to have higher testosterone levels. It can improve your physique dramatically. These gains and the physique changes will be very noticeable, and it can enhance all-around androgen signaling. Out of the DHT compounds, Proviron, Primobolan, and Masteron, which is better as an add-on for TRT? I think the answer to that question really depends on how you respond to each compound and what your goals are. Primobolan is the best DHT derivative to control estrogen, right? If you're sitting at elevated estradiol and it's causing you specifically to have erectile dysfunction, which is what elevated estradiol does, regardless of how much DHT you have, then Primobolan is the best add-on. Masteron blocks estrogen receptors. It does not block aromatase action. And that can work for some people, but at the same time, it could also cause problems, similar problems to the use of enclomiphene. And via its blocking of estrogen receptors, it's actually pretty hard to dial in sexual function. Masteron's great for anabolism, but dialing that in for sexual function on TRT is a little harder than Primobolan. Proviron, though, offers in a 25 milligram per day tablet a little bit of estrogen reduction, a very strong DHT effect, which tends to balance out people's protocols that are a little too estrogen dominant and not enough DHT dominant. So of the DHT derivatives, it all really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're relatively close to being dialed in, but you're a little too estrogenic, Proviron is your answer. If you're trying to dose more testosterone and you want significant anabolism, then Primo is your answer, especially when estrogen's out of range and it's causing you erectile problems. If you want to experiment with getting a sculpted physique and trying to control estrogen in an estrogen receptor blocking way, which again can work for people if done carefully, then Masteron is the better choice. Primobolan works best with high estrogen issues, poor androgen dominance, and needing more testosterone or wanting to take more testosterone, but you can't tolerate the estradiol that comes along with it. Primo acts as a perfect fill-in for that problem. So the final verdict is it does not come without risks, but if used carefully, Primobolan can be an extremely effective TRT add-on. All right, as I said in the beginning, Cortex Labs is dedicated to helping people dial in on TRT. I created a bunch of different products. The most popular right now is Mastering Libido and Erections on TRT. This is a sexual function playbook, a downloadable guide that teaches you how to dial in on every single ester. You can download that in the description of this video, download it instantly, and start using the strategy, the logic, and the protocols that are within this playbook. We have a source list, as anyone should, vetted compounds, anything you can think of, including DHT. This is a very valuable product. You can find that down in the description of this video. If you need to fix erections and libido on test cream, I built a video course for that, which shows you exactly how to do that. You can get that down below as well. If you're struggling to dial in on testsipinate, because it is difficult and does require a great degree of precision, I built an instructional video course showing you how to dial in on testsipinate, specifically for teenage libido and still around erections. If you need one-on-one help to dial in TRT specifically for libido and erections, you can hire me for any one of our packages, which you can find in the description of this video or at livecortex.com in under a minute. We're on the fact-finding call as soon as the next day, and then we start. We've got a single session call, a 3-month program, and a 6-month program. We will dial in the sexual function. Go check out the packages at livecortex.com and book when you are ready based on how serious you are with what level of support you need. Listen, if you want more breakdowns like this where we actually explain how these compounds work in the context of TRT, as well as dialing in TRT for sexual function, anabolism, energy, and performance, subscribe, because this is what we do here. Like the video, it takes you a second and means the world. It actually is the biggest signal to the algorithm right now that people like the video to show our videos out to more people. Otherwise, we talked about Proviron. But I've done a pretty serious breakdown on the use of Proviron with TRT, and I want you to have a look at that video. So I'm going to put it right here in front of you, and I'd love for you to go watch it. Kick ass, rock on. It's been a pleasure being with you, and I'll talk to you in the next one.